Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Scott Ehrisman, Sioux Falls. Another thing to look at with what she's talking about, I was just thinking, is one of the reasons why a lot of these places aren't licensing themselves is because they have illegal immigrants working for them. And you really don't want state agencies and city agencies coming through your business when your workers aren't legal immigrants. So that's another thing to look at, is why they're not licensing themselves. Here to talk about the cell phone ban. It's the first reading tonight, so I thought I'd talk about it in public testimony, since the second reading is the only time the public can come up and talk. I think that the cell phone ban total ban is really unneeded. Distracted driving laws, reckless driving laws, there's all kinds of laws in place that already do it. But I do believe that the public, a large percentage of the public does support it. And if it were put to a vote, it would be probably very close, 50-50. My suggestion would be, from a person who has experience of doing petitions and being involved with that stuff, that this group goes out and gets a petition drive going and gets it on the ballot so that the voters can vote on this very public safety issue. I believe it's above your guys' pay grade. The other thing about that is that they have this long list of businesses that support this. I'm thinking to myself, all these businesses that support this, they have all these employees they could give petitions to. They could get petitions in really fast. So I would suggest that you kill it tonight after the first reading and not vote on it at all. But if you do have to vote on it, just don't vote against it and suggest they get a petition drive going. And, learn like the rest of us do. If we need something done in this town, sometimes it takes a petition drive. As for the total ban on single malt beverages, I totally understand why we probably want to do this. But I also got to realize something as I talked to someone today about this. You're probably going to create a bigger problem, and I'll tell you why. Alcoholism is a disease. Alcoholics will find a way to get alcohol no matter what. And if we get rid of the single malt beverages, they'll just go buy a 6-pack or a 12-pack, which ironically would make the problem even worse because they're having even more alcohol. This really has to do with the ABV of the alcohol and not the size of the alcohol. And I don't think you should ban the single malt beverages. There's other things to look at. And I looked into state law a little bit with this, and that's kind of murky too, of what cities can do when it comes to that. As for the peddlers thing that we're talking about, you got to realize you're getting complaints about people who are peddling in this city because they're doing it illegally, and they're not going to go down and get a license. They're not going to go down and get a badge. They're not doing it anyway. So the people that are complaining about these peddlers, they're not licensed people anyway, so a badge isn't going to make a difference. And as a friend said to me, anybody can make a badge. I can make a badge on my computer. I could download the city logo, put it on there, and say I'm an official peddler, and knock on as many doors as I want. And as for people who complain about peddlers, there's a couple of things you can do. Believe it or not, when I was 13, which is about 30 years ago, I sold candy door to door through Junior Achievement. And you wouldn't believe how many doors had no solicitation. So you can buy these signs, you can put them on your door. Another thing you do is don't answer your door. And I do that a lot too. But I can understand the public safety issue, but like I'm saying, these people are not going to get licenses to begin with. So I don't know what you think you're going to do with the badge, if that's going to help at all. One last thing is, I did a little research, and I know this was talked about last week, but I'll give you my side of the thing. I did a little research on Robert's rules and wearing hats and to meetings and doing public testimony. What I found, there's a great forum out there if you ever guys want to get it. It's called Robert's Rules Forum, and people throw questions at it, and then people answer it, and lawyers come on there, all kinds of people. And one of the biggest things that was said is, if anyone is being disrespectful at the podium, whether that's the clothing they're wearing or in other ways, then the chair has the right to say, stop it, sit down, whatever. As long as an article of clothing like a hat or a tie or a shirt is not disrespectful, it's well within Robert's rules. And secondly, on top of that, the only person who can make that determination is the chair of the meeting, which is Mayor Mike tonight. he would be the one that would have to make the determination that my hat was disrespectful. And the reason I say this is because I know in the olden days it was proper to take off your hat when you come into a building. But nowadays, a lot of people, it's just kind of part of what they wear. Some people wear ties, some people wear caps. And I remember a couple months ago, this young kid came up here, I think he was a contractor or something, and he'd probably been wearing that baseball cap all day long, you could tell. It was sweat through. And he didn't even realize it was on his head, because it was part of his uniform. He wears that hat all day long. And he came up here, and when Rex asked him to take his hat off, he was confused, because I don't think he even knew he had his hat on. So, like I said, as long as something, an article of clothing is not disrespectful, there's nothing wrong with wearing it. Thank you.
Item 24.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by adding definitions to Chapter 70, General Provisions, and adding sections to Chapter 76, Traffic Regulations, Subchapter Miscellaneous Driving Rules, restricting the use of wireless communication devices.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor
If I might,
Erpenbach, please.
I'm going to run through the first reading presentation, and before I do that, I'm going to start with just a couple of quick stories that I've heard just recently. One, a woman from work stopped me in the cafeteria the other day and said to me, "I need to talk to you. I need to tell you the story." And she was driving legally down 41st Street when a car that she clearly saw the driver talking on the telephone, the car sideswiped her and kept driving. Clearly, the gentleman didn't know that he'd even hit another car while he's talking on the phone. The second example I've heard of just recently is a school bus from School Bus Inc. here in Sioux Falls was recently rear-ended by a car that was traveling at 30 miles an hour. No skid marks, because the students in the back of the bus could see that the woman who was driving the car was talking on the phone and had no idea there was a school bus in front of her until she hit it head-on. And then the third thing I'd like to remind you is yesterday's editorial in the Argus Leader talks very eloquently about the reason that we need to consider this ban on handheld devices and that this should be passed by council. We're first going to look at a couple of studies that we've found. The University of California in Berkeley, California, as you remember, was one of the first states in the country to ban handheld devices while driving. And there are actually Sioux Falls residents who drive in California say they feel much safer there than they do in their hometown. And the University of California Berkeley study on this slide covers a broad period of time, both before and after the ban, and shows dramatic decreases in fatalities and injuries in crashes. Second study, the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute study that's on this slide shows that it shows what common sense really already tells us. When we dial a phone or look up a contact or send a text, we take our eyes off the road for a dangerously long period of time. Text messaging, browsing, and dialing result in drivers taking off their roads and their eyes off the road and increases crash risks by 3 times. 14 states and the District of Columbia have already banned the use of handheld electronics while driving. If you do the math and include the numerous cities where this ban is already in place, more than half the licensed drivers in the United States are already under a ban like the one proposed in this ordinance. More than half the drivers in the United States are already driving with this ban that is proposed this evening. Banning handheld devices is a progressive, forward-thinking attitude that appeals to the same people and businesses that our community wants to recruit to move here. We claim as a community to be open and welcoming to corporations and professionals from other parts of the country. This is one more step in making our community a safer place for them to make their new homes. And as it noted on the slide that's on the screen now, we led the state in the texting ban by establishing it in 2012. Other cities followed us very quickly after that, and the state followed us in 2014. Rapid City was actually, and then we'll look at just real quickly the the enforcement efforts in Sioux Falls, we know that between 75 and 80% of people will comply with the law just simply because it is the law. And so our enforcement efforts are shown on the screen at this point. The city of Rapid City then followed us and established a texting ban just in 2014 and really went after enforcing that texting ban. And their enforcement statistics on the screen now are pretty interesting. They really went after it. You've seen video of the stings that they did with texting and driving. They issued a lot of warning tickets that first year, and really their efforts paid off. As you see, their numbers for this year are much lower. I'm going to read just very briefly the wording of the way that the amendment would be to the existing ordinance, and then we can have a conversation about it. First, we'll define what a hands-free mode of operation is. It's the means by which a user engages in conversation without the use of either hand to activate, deactivate, or initiate a function of the electronic communication device. The prohibition is on the use of electric communication devices. No person may operate or be in actual physical control of a motor vehicle in motion or a part of traffic, which means being at a stop sign, while using a handheld electronic communication device to engage in a call or in any other use of the device. Exceptions include the device being used in the reasonable belief that a person's life or safety is in immediate danger, and if it's an emergency vehicle while in the performance of official duties. Other exceptions are to report illegal activity to a law enforcement agency, to communicate with an emergency response operator, fire department, law enforcement, hospital, doctor's office, health clinic, and other emergency situations. And also the hands-free mode of operation is also part of the exception. That would be Bluetooth and those kinds of alternatives. Also, exceptions would be as a GPS or navigation device. As long as the device is affixed to the motor vehicle, you're fine doing that. And the other would be to transmit or receive messages on the non-cellular two-way radio with one hand. Now, as you know, this proposed ordinance is the result of the work of a large group of citizens in Sioux Falls. You'd look at this group of business leaders, and the list includes leaders and owners of prominent corporate entities. If you want to talk about education, Augustana University and the University of Sioux Falls are on the list. Would you go back one, please? Thanks. Supporting this ban in an effort to promote the safety of their students who come here from all over the globe. There are fitness groups, safety organizations, nonprofits, all are included. Now you can switch. And if you want to talk politics, the group of individuals supporting the ban includes both sides of the aisle. Prominent Republicans and Democrats are behind this, as well as 6 retired judges, including a retired Supreme Court justice who spoke to us last week, 2 former state's attorneys, former city councilors and mayors, and an amazing array of business leaders. They all support this proposal because it's not a political issue, and it shouldn't be on the ballot because it is a public safety issue. And as the Argus leader said so eloquently yesterday, distracted, reckless, dangerous driving of any type is not acceptable. But let's address the largest distractor first, and that is the phone. I'd be open to questions and I would make a motion to set the date of second reading for November 10th.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion to have a second reading on November 10th. It has been seconded. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Karski,
No.
Kylie,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers,
No.
Anderson,
No.
Erickson,
No.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson.
No. Then it's failed 3-5.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.